Now, the big names, Yamamoto, Snell, Montgomery, etc., they have yet to come off the board. And that leads us to the teams under pressure because most of these teams, not all, want those three guys or some combination or one or any of them, quite frankly. But let's go in reverse order of teams under most pressure. I'm starting with the team under the least of the most here. And that team is actually the Seattle Mariners, one of the few teams in the sport right now that does not have a great need for starting pitching. The Mariners, though, have a need for offense, and they've already traded Eugenio Suarez to the Diamondbacks for a high upside reliever, Carlos Vargas, and a backup catcher, Sebi Zavala. They've also declined to offer a qualifying offer to Teoscar Hernandez. He's a guy who hit a bunch of home runs for them last year, but like Suarez, is a high strikeout type. They are seemingly trying to get away from that. Now, they've gained financial flexibility, but they've lost some power. Let's take a look at this, where Eugenio Suarez ranked in the 2 years he was with the Mariners in home runs. You see Julio Rodriguez had 60, Cal Raleigh had 57, Suarez 53. Now, I know he also led the American League in strikeouts last season with 214, and that is the issue that the Mariners are trying to address. But they're now looking at Luis Urias at third base instead of Suarez. Urias, yeah, he may make more contact, but I don't know that he's going to give you the same production. They need a hitter. And if you remember, Cal Raleigh, who was on that list, he called this team out on the final weekend of the season for their lack of spending. They've created some flexibility by letting Suarez go and letting Hernandez go, or trading Suarez and letting Hernandez go. Now we'll see how they apply it in what is a thin market for position players. All right, next team on this list, oh yes, the Boston Red Sox. Now the Boston Red Sox, they let go of Chaim Bloom as their chief baseball officer, hired Craig Breslow to replace him, and they are in the same position as a number of large market teams, in need of starting pitching. The problem is, and you're going to hear this over and over again this offseason, the demand for these pitchers, Snell, Yamamoto, Montgomery, etc., it exceeds the supply. So what are the Red Sox going to do? Well, over the past few years, we've seen them cut back on payroll. Now, the dismissal of Bloom and hiring of Breslow seems to indicate that John Henry and company are ready to spend again. And if you look at their 5-year pattern here, you'll see what I'm talking about, and you'll understand that they need to pick it up a little bit. First in payroll in 2019. 2020, the shortened season, dropped to 4th, then to 8th in 21, 6th in 22, and 12th out of the top 10. The Red Sox out of the top 10 last season. So obviously now they know what they need to do. And you would think with the change in heads of baseball operations and the general direction that they're going in, that it's time for them to go big again. But Craig Breslow is a new chief baseball officer, hasn't done the job. He's a former major league reliever. We will see if he is ready to close. Continuing on, oh yes, the San Francisco Giants, number 2 on my list. The Giants, of course, are a team that lacks star power, a team that has failed to acquire star power in recent seasons, and it has become a source of frustration, of course, for their fans. Well, they need to be in the mix for virtually every big name on the market, from Ohtani to Yamamoto to Cody Bellinger to Jung-Hoo Lee to Matt Chapman. I would imagine they'll be on all of those guys. And yes, there is pressure here. There is pressure because the president of baseball operations, while he got an extension to match the same term that they gave the new manager, Bob Melvin, 3 years, it's time to produce. And this was not only an unsuccessful team last year, this was an uninspired team, a team that was not particularly entertaining. So Zaidi knows he's going to need to do something here. How many of those guys I just named that he can acquire? How many others perhaps he can get in trade? It remains to be seen, but Zaidi knows, everyone in the sport knows, he needs to do something. Finally, number 1 on my list of teams most under pressure, the New York Yankees. Now, I'm sure most of you watching and listening are aware of Brian Cashman's epic rant at the GM meetings a few weeks back. That was a rant born of frustration over the growing criticism of his recent decision-making. Okay, that's cool. We get that. But the way to stop the noise, always in professional sports, college sports too for that matter, is to win. That's how you shut it out. And the way to win, if you're the New York Yankees, often is to money whip other teams. And like the Red Sox, they kind of have stopped doing that in recent years. Now, they've been more at the top of the payroll rankings, and they're not as egregious in terms of their lack of spending as the Red Sox. But have they spent well? That's another question. So it's pretty obvious where they need to spend. Look at their outfield right now. This is amazing that it's the New York Yankees. Aaron Judge, well, we know who he is. He's pretty good. Estevan Florial, a guy who was DFA'd recently, and Everson Pereira, a prospect who may turn out to be a good player. They are pretty open in their acknowledgement that they need a left fielder and a center fielder, preferably left-handed. And the Yankees, when they've been successful, or at least at times in their recent history under Hal Steinbrenner, they have spent money big in certain off seasons. I think of the 2008-2009 offseason. They spent $424 million on CC Sabathia, Mark Teixeira, and AJ Burnett. That year, the following season, they won the World Series. In 2013, after the 13 season, they were in kind of a similar circumstance. They were coming off a disappointing season. Joel Sherman of the New York Post has drawn this parallel. And that offseason, too, they spent $438 million combined for Tanaka, Ellsbury, Beltran, and McCann. Now, those deals obviously had mixed results, and a World Series title did not result. We all know the Yankees have not won the series since 2009, that year when they brought in Sabathia, Teixeira, and Burnett. At the same time, they have clear needs. They theoretically know what they need to do. And as their owner, Hal Steinbrenner, should be clued in at this point. He presumably should be ready to spend.